Royal Road. This is episode 39. And if you're watching the YouTube version of this and you're thinking, wow, WH is going solo on this, he's going to do an entire show, talk about a match all by himself. No, that's not what's happening today. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties on the end of my guest today, but that's okay. I think most of you people listen to this as a podcast, audio only. So we have his audio, so that's fine. But this is our last episode of the year. So we're closing out 2023 with a very special guest, a first-time guest on this show, but no stranger to any of the specialized podcasts I've done before. He's been on both Cruel Summer and I think also Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Have you been on both?
I was on both, I believe. Yeah, I think for
There you
the
go.
Thunderstruck, we did Koji Kanemoto and Liger, and then I forget what the heck we did on the other one, but I definitely remember being on Thunderstruck for sure.
You've been on Cruel Summer. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh
no
doubt. Yeah, I just can't remember what show it was or what match it was. But we'll talk. We'll find out later.
But I've wanted this person on this show for a long time, and here he is. It's from Voices of Wrestling. It's the co-founder of Voices of Wrestling. It's Rich Kraetsch. Rich, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And yeah, sorry about my the video on my end. We were trying to get it figured out. I don't really have a webcam that works all that well. You don't want to see my face anyway, especially at this time of the day. I'm literally petting a dog. I mean, maybe actually that might actually be a selling point.
We have, I do shows with our Joshi Perez expert Karen Peterson and her dog Zelda shows up quite often in our podcast. It's all good. I love dogs. So
if that's a highlight, then yeah, I should have probably found the webcam and got the dog on here and stuff. But yeah, no, it has a little bit of issues. We were hoping to try to resolve it, but sorry, you just have my voice. Not even my picture. We were trying to make it work, but I mean,
it's appropriate. We'll be able to handle it
anyway. Well,
you're from Voices of Wrestling, so we have your voice.
Voice, yeah. It's not Faces of Wrestling. It's Voices, right?
Exactly. But Rich is our guest. He's from I think one of the top. I'm gonna say top 3, wrestling websites out there in the landscape of professional wrestling.
I'll take that.
Voice of Wrestling, I obviously post wrestling. I'm biased. I got to play.
You got to be. You got to play. That's your team. That's the home team. No, that's the home team. That's all right. That's fine. I get it.
But for those of you who might not be familiar with your work, Rich, and like Voices of Wrestling, tell the folks out there a little bit about Voices of Wrestling. We'll get to plugs at the end of the of this episode, but give them a bit of a rundown of what you guys do over at VOW.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, as of this recording, we're doing this on November 26th. We're recording this, and it was the day after CM Punk returned to WWE for Survivor Series. And actually, that's how the whole website began. As I went to Money in the Bank 2011, and I was so enthused about CM Punk's thing, and just like I've written this a lot, and I've talked about it on audio a lot, but I was at that show, and there were people that I didn't know still watch wrestling, like friends that I grew up with that watched wrestling with me that were at that show. I had my cousin. I thought my cousin stopped watching wrestling, and I walked in the concourse, and there he is at that show. And that sort of inspired me to create this website, which was meant to be just a passion project of why people love professional wrestling, what it is that they love about professional wrestling. And it's kind of grown and evolved into just being a full-fledged, pro wrestling website. We don't do news. We are mostly columns, reviews, previews, as well as the podcast network. But yeah, it started as that, and now it's been going on for about obviously Money in the Bank 2011, and we're here in 2023, about to finish out the year. So it's been going on for a long, long time. And yeah, it's about people being passionate about pro wrestling. That's really ultimately what the ethos of the website is. If you're passionate about wrestling in one way or another, doesn't matter what you're passionate about, doesn't matter the company you're passionate about, the wrestling style you're passionate about, the wrestlers you're passionate about. That's kind of the home there. And that's what we do at the podcast network, where we have a ton of different shows about pretty much every wrestling company around the world. We have shows that are focused on Dragon Gate, shows that are focused on New Japan Pro Wrestling, shows that are focused on the American wrestling, variety shows, one about a European wrestling, one about just everything you do, a pro wrestling trivia game, like all that sort of stuff is all available there at the Voice of Wrestling Podcast Network. So that's what we kind of do there. And then on the website, it's columns, previews, and reviews about wrestling. No news, mostly just getting down to that. But it's been a ride. It's been a lot of fun. And what started as just like a little blog for me to talk to some people about why they're passionate about wrestling has turned into this thing that now decade plus we've been doing and stronger than ever.
So I'm getting a little bit of popping, I think, on your end here. I don't know if it's your mic setting or something like that, but it's a little peek behind the scenes, folks. But
I will try to fix that. Sorry,
but it's okay. Just want to let you know. But one thing I will say, as being someone who's listened to Voice of Wrestling for quite a while now, is that I do appreciate like the variety that is on the website and the podcast network. Also, if you're a big fan of like different sodas out there, like Rich does a thing on on their Patreon where he'll test drive a new flavor of a soda. And so if you into that kind of stuff, and I know people who watch, who like listen to me, know like, oh, you're all about the food, WH, and so like Rich handles like the beverage side of things,
Sort
in
of.
podcasting
Yeah.
network, right?
Full disclosure, I think it halfway through my show switched my mic to my Apple headphones, and now I'm on
Okay.
my normal headphones, so it should
There you go.
sound significantly better. I don't know if it does.
That
or
sounds
not
way
on here.
better.
So yeah, okay. So we can restart if you want.
No,
It's up to you.
no.
Yeah, okay. All right.
This is
What a
the
disaster.
fans
No one's going to listen
are
to anything we do. No
the
one's gonna
the
ever go to the website or
No,
listen to
no,
any of my
no, no.
podcasts after they hear this very unprofessional operation that we've done so far. But
I give my ringing endorsement, so hopefully I don't know if that's gonna help or not. But
yeah, that might hurt
anyways.
actually. But no, I do. Yeah, and we have our Patreon, flagshippatreon.com, and I do Mountain Dew reviews on there. I stay out of all other, like, I'm not a big cola guy. I'm not a big, but there's so many different random ass Mountain Dews that come out every single year now that it just started as a joke one time that I was like, haha, there's like, I believe it started around Christmas time when they had like a gingerbread, Mountain Dew. And I was like, I'm going to drink this gingerbread Mountain Dew and talk about it. Or maybe it was the Flaming Hot Mountain. It was one of those that started it. And then people were like, anytime a new Mountain Dew flavor would come out, they're like, are you going to review it? And I'm like, oh, I guess I have to now. So I now have a house full of, Mountain Dew that I don't really drink, that because I don't really drink soda that much. I drink it like a couple times a month at this point as I've gotten old, and now I'm just a tea and coffee guy pretty much. But yeah, no, I do Mountain Dew reviews behind the paywall there at flagshippatreon.com, in addition to a bunch of other stuff that we do, including a brand new series I just launched, which might actually be not to get the plugs. You said we were gonna do the plugs later, but
no,
while
throw
we're
it out
plugging
there.
away, I might as well get it in. I just started a brand new series this week called Bret versus Owen, which is actually a look back at the Bret Hart versus Owen Hart feud that kicked off at Survivor Series 1993, which is now 30 years old, which makes me feel like I am falling apart and dying. So that, when I got word that was happening and it was 30 years to the date, I was like, God damn. First off, it's 30 years. That's horrifying. But also, like, yeah, let's dig into it a little bit. So yeah, I'm really excited about the series. It's kind of an audio documentary style series, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners would love to dive into that.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be really good. We're gonna go month by month as well, excruciating detail. So this first episode was just about November, and then the next month will be just about December, and we'll do that all the way up until the summer for Survivor Series or SummerSlam 1994, and that's what I'll kind of call the end of the feud. And there's a few things that we'll talk about after that, but yeah, I'm really excited about that series, and I think it's going to be great. And yeah, it's one of many things we do there.
That sounds great. I mean, you would think how much could you talk about? But as I recall, thinking about it right now, there's a lot you could talk about. They feuded for a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of the stuff that I am discovering as I'm going through, because I'm watching every second of the TV, and there's things that I totally forgot about. Like, there's one thing that happens right after Survivor Series 93 where Owen Hart has like a match against some jobber on the show or whatever, and he comes out and he's wearing the Bret gear, he's got the glasses, he does the sharpshooter, and it's just like, oh geez. And like halfway through the match, the fans are starting to chant, we want Bret, we want Bret, we want Bret, and stuff. And then a couple days later, they have a wrestling challenge thing where Gorilla Monsoon calls Owen Hart and says, oh, I'm here today with the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart, Owen Hart. And Owen's just like, Gorilla, I'd really appreciate if you didn't call me the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart. I wish you'd call me, Owen Hart. Or it just little subtle stuff like that I didn't even know existed at the time. Because, normally when you watch the documentaries or any of the, the WrestleMania match or SummerSlam, they show you the turn at Survivor Series. Or not necessarily the turn, but the push, the shove, the anger. Then they show them reconciling around Christmas. Then you get the Royal Rumble, and then you're off. And that's it. But I think there's a lot of little stuff in between that I'm discovering, in addition to, reading through Bret's book and you obviously, I'm sure you've read that book and all the weirdness that is in that book as well, where Bret lays it all out there.
The Hart family.
Very opinionated man. Yes, plus it is the Hart family. So there's plenty. There's the Bruce book. It's the Hart family. That's all you have to know. So plenty of things that, I at first wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it into a multi-month thing. And as I'm doing my notes and stuff, it's like, oh yeah, there's so much meat on this bone. So I'm excited to get it going.
So Rich will plug the Patreon address at the end of this episode. But that sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to listening to it myself. And of course, like if you are listening to this podcast and you are from Mountain Dew, maybe you should head over to Voices of Wrestling and consider giving them some sponsorship, because Rich is tampering with getting diabetes for the sake
Right.
of
I'm doing it for the
your
people. All right.
product.
I'm doing it for the people. I'm now, yeah, my A1C is skyrocketing thanks to doing it for the people. That's the internal pressures of people saying, please drink Mountain Dew and review. And I'm like, fine. So yeah, please support
But
my future medical bills. I'm not
that's
in
right.
Canada. I'm in America. So
This is there you go. But we are talking. This is the long and winding road. This is All Japan in the 1990s. And Rich, what is like your background of your fandom of this era of professional wrestling?
yeah, so All Japan Pro Wrestling. I mean, I kind of got to the world of Japanese wrestling pretty late. When I first started watching wrestling, obviously I'm US based, and I first started watching basically like 94 ish, and mostly WWF at that time. Like just watching. I think I was trying to watch like whatever USA show was on. Pacific Blue or whatever. That was that. That was like the bike cop show. Or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that.
For some reason, I liked it as a kid. I don't know. Maybe Mario Lopez shirtless did so. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I loved it as a kid. And I remember wrestling was on before or after, and I forget where it was. And I was just like, And then I started watching that and really enjoyed it. And then there was the video games for Sega Genesis, and I really liked those, like WWF Raw and Royal Rumble and those ones. And that kind of hooked me. And then WrestleMania, the arcade game. And then I kind of fell out of favor with it a little bit. Got back in 1998 when pretty much everybody did, 97, 98, and that's when I became a full-fledged gigantic wrestling fan at that time. That's when by 99, 2000, 2001, when my friends are starting to fall off and I didn't fall off and I was like the only one left that was still watching, I was like, okay, this is going to be a thing that I'm just never going to let go. And with that, then I started trying to explore different types of wrestling and finding different types of wrestling. And I think my first foray into Japanese wrestling was Hayabusa and FMW and just like that stuff, where it's like, if you were around at that time, I think you would know that if it like Scuzzy Torrents or Kazaa or whatever we had to download to watch these things, and there'd be like crazy Japanese death match. And I'm like, oh, sounds good to me. What is this? And it was almost always like Hayabusa stuff. And there was something about Hayabusa that attracted me. And that's actually how I got entered into All Japan Pro Wrestling, is that I found out this guy was in All Japan. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I love Hayabusa. This match got recommended to me. I watched it. And what I got was a whole different world of wrestling that I had never even knew existed at any level whatsoever. And, yes, there was the issue of Japanese commentary, and that's something that a lot of people had to get through, but the work was so good and the work was exactly what I wanted. I, at that time, become completely just a fan of in-ring work and high-level work and that sort of stuff. So watching that match, watching Hayabusa in All Japan, and then that opening up an entirely different world of All Japan to me, just totally transformed me as a wrestling fan. And it became, this obsession to go through, and there was different sites like Ditch's website or whatnot that you were able to go, match by match. And I basically picked up somewhere in the, like, I've watched a little bit of the 70s, 80s All Japan. That stuff really doesn't do much for me. I know some people really like that era, and there's stuff to enjoy in that era, but pretty much what I decided to do is go in then a couple years later and just start at like the mid 80s and just watch every match that interests me at all, and got through pretty much the entire quote unquote era, the King's Road era of All Japan, which you guys talk about on this show, All Japan in the 90s, watching pretty much all that stuff from there. And just, yeah, it's to me, it's a transformative brand of professional wrestling, particularly in the 90s, where it's just like what they are doing is you see the fingerprints in this era all over wrestling today. It's inescapable, but it's just a different, to me, it's like the best version of pro wrestling you'll ever have. Like, there's nothing that has come anywhere close to that. New Japan in the mid 2010s was great. I love that. That's really, really great stuff. And man, nothing can recreate a great All Japan match in the mid 90s, particularly involving, the four pillars and that sort of stuff. That stuff is just, to me, the best of the best. It doesn't get any better than that.
Who was your guy, Rich? Who was your guy?
I oscillate a little bit. When I first started watching, Kobashi was my guy, and then I sort of started becoming a Kawada guy a little bit. I don't know why. Like, maybe it's just because he's just such a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? And then there's something about that I just really love. And sometimes I'm a Misawa guy. He tends to never be the guy that I go to. I'm usually a Kobashi or a Kawada guy. Those two just seem to work for me. It depends. If I want like high level, this guy is like the best of the best main eventer, Kobashi's the guy I watch. But then, man, sometimes Kawada is just the perfect amount of grumpy to just get me all in. But that's taking nothing away from, Misawa, one of the greatest wrestlers ever. I just prefer Kobashi or Kawada usually, but there's really no bad choice between any of them.
No, I mean, I'm a Kawada guy. I love Kobashi. I think the way I try to explain who I like is that as a pure pro wrestler, I think Kobashi is the best. You can't build a better babyface than Ken Kobashi, I feel.
No.
Especially in the Japanese, promotion. but for his story, especially in context with Misawa, I think Kawada is the most interesting of the four pillars, because if you look at his struggle against Misawa and against kind of like gaining the favor of in the eyes of Giant Baba, he has a immensely interesting story among any of the wrestlers in all Japan. And even I'd say, like, if you compare him to, like, say the Three Musketeers over in New Japan at the same time, he's way more interesting in that sense,
Yeah.
especially if you're placing it in context of historical significance and things like that.
Yeah,
But
he's the one that had to prove it the most. I mean, Misawa was like, once he takes the mask off and once he's Misawa, and everybody knows it. And you know, it all happens in that one day where the great story of, you know, them getting to the building and people are chanting Misawa, and then we're going, all right, fuck it then. Misawa's Misawa, let's go. Let's just take the mask off. He's our guy. And it's obvious. You see the guy and you're like, yeah, that's the dude. Kobashi, that guy from day one, you could tell that's going to be a guy. You see him as a young boy back, you know, behind the scenes a little bit in those matches, and it's very clear that that dude is going to be a superstar. Kawada was never that. He had to work way harder than all those other guys to get to the level he got to, and it came across in the grumpiness of his work, and like you said, just the story just works perfectly, and it works perfectly for this match too. And what we're talking about here is a perfect segue to this Kawada Tenryu match, which is all about that background, that story that we're talking about.
that's right. So just so people know, we are going to talk about Toshiaki Kawada. We're going to talk about a very famous match he has with his trainer, his mentor, the guy who you can tell he idolized as a young wrestler coming up in the All Japan Dojo system, and that's Genichiro Tenryu. This is from October 28th, 2000. This is following the exodus of Mitsuharu Misawa and 98% of the roster to Wrestling Noah.
Stayed around, yeah, there's the 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, there's the only people really left from the All Japan system are Kawada, Masafuchi, Taiyokea, and I guess you can count Stan Hansen, but he's in the twilight of his career, right? So, and Steve Williams. Steve Williams sticks around, but again, those two are kind of it's dire.
Yeah, so, those. Yeah, if you're counting those, you're really just like, and I guess those guys too. But it's 3. You're really down to 3 at best 5. But it's a stretch for those other 2 for sure.
So we're gonna talk about this match, and one of the things that I think was really great about you picking this match, Rich, was like you could talk about so much like context and background of this match, how much meaning it has, not just for like the actual relationship between the two participants, between Kawada and Tenryu, because they have a long history with one another. Tenryu was his trainer in the dojo. He mentored him after he came back from his excursion in North America and made him part of his Revolution stable. And then at some point, you know, when Tenryu's regular partner Hara had to get kicked out of All Japan because of gambling debts, he picked Kawada to become his regular tag partner, and we'll talk a bit about that. But also, like in relation to Tenryu's history with All Japan, Tenryu's like like the All Japan following 2000 is like the year that everything changes in pro wrestling landscape in Japan, because Pro Wrestling Noah is created. Misawa decides he can't work with Mrs. Baba. The differences are too great, and he takes all the roster. They'd rather go with him. And because Kawada's relationship with Misawa is not great, he decides, I think he was offered, but he just said, I'm not going to be second fiddle to you anymore. I'd rather be a big fish in a much smaller pond than being, like the guy you're probably not going to push anyways. You're going to push Kobashi over me. And so he decides to stay. But this is from October 28th, 2000. It's part of the October Giant Series. This is day 11th. This is the 28th anniversary show at the Nippon Budokan. The attendance is listed as 16,300. Maybe one of the few times they'll ever actually get something over, close to over 10,000 since the Exodus. They sometimes do it, but this is probably one of the last ones for an actual legit dream match, I would say. But at the time, it's between Kawada and Tenryu here.
Yeah, there's so much going into it, and we'll talk about the match itself. But like you said, I mean, we could do hours on like everything that this match meant before the bell even rings. I mean, just so much that and then after the match, there's so much to talk about after the match. Because to me, and the reason I kind of picked this match, and like you said, it's like the final episode that you're going to have this year in 2023, and really, I always looked at this match as kind of closing the book on the King's Road era of All Japan Pro Wrestling and beginning whatever you want to call this in between this post Exodus era. We're not quite in the Pro Wrest Love, Keiji Muto era just yet. It's just something in between, and it's something completely different. And the match is going to be worked very different than a King's Road style match. It's going to end very differently than a King's Road style match. Plus, yeah, you have Tenryu. He's back. Tenryu, who was, the biggest enemy of the Babas, the biggest enemy of All Japan Pro Wrestling, the guy left in the midst of them rising up and going to SWS and starting that whole company there, and it could have cratered All Japan. It could have been the biggest thing, the worst thing that ever happened to them. And it ended up weirdly being the best thing that ever happened to them, because then they said, all right, screw it then. We'll try Misawa, we'll try Kobashi, we'll try Taue, we'll try Kawada. And then boom, 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 boom. All four of them just all became, gigantic stars. And then the business exploded afterwards. So it ended up giving them a tremendous opening. But at the time, the hurt was there. And the hurt always remained with the Giant Baba in particular, saying that guy will never work for me ever again. I will never work for that guy ever again because of what he did to us. And we know how important loyalty is, to Japanese wrestling and in Japan or whatever. And that was the greatest bit of disloyalty, you can ever see in professional wrestling, just ditching, bouncing and going, yeah, I'm going to go start this new competition against you. Even though I don't really have any real beef with you guys, but this guy's giving me way more money. So bye, I'm out. Like, it's just, it's a wild story of Tenryu leaving, All Japan to go, basically form SWS and compete with All Japan Pro Wrestling throughout the rest of the decade. And now here he is back. And not only is he back, he's against Kawada, the guy that, he ditched his father. It's very much a father versus son thing. He didn't just ditch All Japan Pro Wrestling. He didn't just ditch, Giant Baba. He left Kawada high and dry. Kawada also could have been, he ended up benefiting tremendously, but it very well could have been the same way for him as well. Is that, he ditched him in 1990. He left him high and dry. That was his tag team partner. That was his mentor. That was his trainer. And he's gone. He left. And Kawada, kind of that resentment, like you said, was always kind of there for him as well. So you have those stakes involved. I mean, we're talking about decades worth of stories and lore and just all this stuff going into it. These guys haven't had a match, in 11 years. It was October 8th, 1989 when they last had a match. And there's totally different men. I mean, at this point, you have Tenryu, who is now in kind of the twilight of his career. Kawada, who's still a gigantic, who's now kind of a gigantic star, maybe even bigger than he ever was. And yeah, it's just, at the end of the day, it's very much a father versus son match, and it's the father who left to go get milk and never came back. Versus the young son he left at home, who is now like, what, fuck you, you left, and now I'm the man of the house. You left. I'm the man of this house. I'm the guy that is still here in All Japan. Now you're coming back to my territory because you're coming crawling back. And that's, it's just such a good, I mean, everything building up to this match. And, both men come out and they're both wearing the yellow and the black. They're both wearing the Revolution gear. And it's just, there's so much that yeah, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about the background of this match. And before we even get to the bell ringing.
I mean, that's I think the biggest point that I think you can make is the colors, because as like, the four pillars are deciding on their colors, like Misawa is the silver and the green, Kobashi is orange, Taue is red, later on Jun Akiyama is blue. But like, what colors does Kawada decide to sport? He's going to sport the colors of Tenryu, the black with yellow. So it's very telling. Like, I like that Tenryu's influence, even after he's banned from ever coming back to All Japan by Giant Baba, that Tenryu, that the Kawada decides, what, he's still such a huge influence on me as a wrestler. I'm going to wear his colors.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't escape anyone who watches wrestling at that time. Like, all the fans know, like, oh, he's sporting Tenryu's colors, because Tenryu is one of the few wrestlers who had, colors in his gear. Everyone else wore black, right? Like, Jumbo's all black, right? So it's there's that. So like, kind of the presence of Tenryu through Kawada is always there in All Japan in the 90s. But whereas like now Tenryu's doing SWS, that folds, so he forms Wrestling Association or Wrestling and Romance, if that's the version of WAR that you want to call. And then that folds. He goes to do some stuff with FMW, including some deathmatch stuff with Hayabusa and Onita. But then the most significant thing he does is he goes to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he is now having all these dream matches with the Three Musketeers, notably with Shinya Hashimoto. If you ever want to watch some hard-hitting wrestling between two guys who just want to beat the shit out of each other just because they're wrestlers, go watch any match between Shinya Hashimoto and Genichiro Tenryu. He wins the IWGP heavyweight title. He is the first wrestler in history to go from being a Triple Crown champion to becoming IWGP champion. He's the first one to go that route. I think he might have been the first one to hold both. The top of my head, I can't remember exactly. But there's so he comes back. So the exodus happens. Misawa leaves with most of the roster. Mrs. Baba's having a crisis because he also takes their TV. So they're fucked.
Right, yeah, we forgot that point. The best thing to make money. He said, "Oh, that's mine now, thank you." And then TV Network goes, "Yeah, that's true, and we're with them now. Bye." Okay.
So what can she do? Well, she could do the thing that probably no one expected to happen, and that is Genichiro Tenryu returning to All Japan Pro Wrestling. And it's kind of a band-aid, I would say, in context historically. It doesn't necessarily help their business, but the fact that they booked the Triple Crown tournament, which is what we're going to be talking about, the finals of that tournament, because Kobashi was a champion. He had to vacate the title, obviously, but you have this legit dream match for the Triple Crown to kind of signal hopefully a new era of All Japan Pro Wrestling. Of course, it doesn't happen. It never reaches height. I don't think until you say, Rich, maybe the Muto era, the Pro Res Love era is when they start to gain momentum and okay, they're gonna hopefully reach a point where they can try to recapture attendance rates and business levels of the 90s. It doesn't necessarily happen because Muto decides to leave at that point too.
Because Muto's Muto as well. So right. It doesn't quite. No, it helps them feel like, because they felt completely defeated after the Exodus. It felt like, oh my god, what is this company? What is even the purpose of this company? Is there any reason for them to exist? It felt like they were on death's door, that they were imminently dying. Tenryu, kind of like you said, is a band-aid on a giant wound. It's like, all right, well, the bleeding is sort of it's still bleeding a little bit. It's still soaking through the band-aid a little bit, but at least we haven't healed it up. We haven't stitched it up, but at least we put a band-aid over it to kind of keep it. And then Muto's kind of the beginning of the stitches, but it's never the same. You can stitch it up, but there's still the scars there, and the scars remain to this day. I mean, All Japan has really never, now it's wild that still we're, so many years past it. And I love All Japan. I mean, All Japan's had a tremendous year here in 2023, but they've had so many ups and downs and twists and turns in the years then, and nobody would ever argue that they've ever come close to where they were, before the Exodus. It's just you'd be wild to try to argue that. They just never ever did.
Oh, I still love the company.
Yeah,
I'll have my ups and downs, but I'm okay. I don't expect them to ever reach, be on a par.
No, they're
second to New Japan or anything like that.
They're not an indie. I know some people like to I don't know if I want to call them an indie. Maybe that's just my I feel so bad calling All Japan Pro Wrestling, a Japanese indie or whatever. But they're certainly closer to that than they are to New Japan or whatever. Or so. But that's fine because you know what? Who cares? I
love it. I love when they bring people from Big Japan and all the other indies. And
they've been great. They've had a tremendous year. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched All Japan in 2023, get on board. It's a really fun company right now.
Oh my god! Aoyagi was such a great member of the roster this year, being Triple Crown champion, and now Nakajima's there. Holy shit, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this tournament. Let's talk about each man's path to get to the finals, Rich. So for Kawada, he defeats legit one of someone he actually hates in real life, Steve Williams, in the first round. And then he goes into the semifinals and defeats former New Japan wrestler Shiro Koshinaka. But I believe Koshinaka was originally an All Japan wrestler, and then he jumped to New Japan. So everything comes full circle in wrestling, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, when times get tough and money's on the line, yeah, you'll do whatever.
Tenryu's path is he defeats Bart Gunn, aka Mike Barton, in the first round of this, and he defeats his former tag partner and eternal rival Stan Hansen in the semifinal. So that brings us to Nippon Budokan for the final day of the October Giant Series, the 28th anniversary show, Rich. And before we get to the match, we're gonna talk about this card, because this is, if nothing else, this card is gonna show you just how dire things are in All Japan.
Yeah.
So
it is, yeah, it's a fun card, but none of these people are All Japan Pro wrestlers. They're all it's an interesting card, but yeah, you can tell it gets real weird real quick. So
opening is Giant Kimala, who is an All Japan guy. He defeats Shigeo Okamura, who funny enough, this guy decides, I'm not going to have any success in Japan as a wrestler. So he goes to Mexico and basically becomes like the liaison for every Japanese wrestler who does their excursion over there. This guy apparently takes care of everyone who comes from Japan.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest movers and shakers in Japanese wrestling. And like, unless you really know, you have no idea. He's just the guy that sometimes pops up on Fantastica Manias, and you're like, oh yeah, Okamura, hey, what's he doing here? And then he goes back and does his thing. But yeah, he's a very important figure in Japanese wrestling. But yeah, it's a hey, good for him to say, you know what, I'm not really getting anywhere here. Let me go here. And yeah, he's had an incredible career and still going.
6-man tag team match, the Dragon Gate, or Toryumon at this point still.
Yeah,
the Toryumon team of M2K, Masaki Mochizuki, Susumu Mochizuki, and Yasushi Kanda. These guys are all still around, by the way.
Yeah, and in the terms of Mochizuki and Susumu, like, still as good as they were.
Oh yeah,
maybe better.
I think Masaki Mochizuki is even better now than he was back then. Absolutely. Yeah, and they defeat the trio of Grand Naniwa, rest in peace, great wrestler from Michinoku Pro, Ryuji Hichigata, who still shows up in All Japan every once in a while. I think he was in the last version of Voodoo Murders, and basically a cockroach who won't go away, Taru.
Yep, who unfortunately is still around and unfortunately hasn't gone away. And yeah, sadly.
Next match is a tag team match. Nobutaka Araya, who is basically Tenryu's young boy, and Koshinaka defeat the amazing, the next coming of the Miracle Violence Collection, George Hines and Mike Barton.
Yes,
just kidding.
Yes, George Hines. Yeah, it is unbelievable that they've gotten to this point here, but yeah, George Hines and Mike Barton. So yeah, not quite the Miracle Violence connection, but the dollar store. I don't even know if a dollar store is right. It's free. Take
Mike Barton. Yeah. Steve Williams out legit in the Brawl for All, so it's he's got that. That's the only reason he's in this company, by the way, is because he legit knocked out Steve Williams. So Giant Baba said, "Oh, you're free. Why don't you come over here? We can use that." 6-man tag team.
That was always one of the most crazy things, going and looking, discovering Japanese wrestling for the first time. And I remember watching and I'm like, is that fucking Bart Gunn in All Japan? Why is he like, why did they say we need Bart Gunn? And yeah, learning why they did is even more ridiculous than the fact that Bart Gunn is a regular in All Japan Pro Wrestling.
I love it because it's like perfect pro wrestling promoter mentality, I feel.
Right. Yeah. Like years later, Kendo Kashin getting pushed to the top of New Japan Pro Wrestling's junior division because he beat a Gracie in a match where the Gracie was kicking his ass and then tore his ACL. So Kendo Kashin won. And they're like, well, he won an MMA fight against a Gracie. This man is our new star. And it's like, but okay, he won, but did he? Whatever. You know what? I'm sure it'll work. Go for it.
Yeah, that turned out beautifully for them. 6-man tag team match. Johnny Smith, Masanobu Fuchi, and Yoshiaki Fujiwara. He's one of those guys, like, if you said to me Fujiwara was like 70 in 1990, in 2000, I believe you.
Yeah.
But he's probably like 50, but he just, this is what like a lot of like, I'm going to say Japanese businessman lifestyle does to you.
Those cigarettes really add up. Yeah.
He's
the guy who has looked roughly 66 years old for about 30 years at this point. So, which is good for him because he doesn't look that much older these days than he did like in like 2010, but good for him. But yeah, like you're saying, he basically got to a certain age, a very old age. Like he looked elderly 30 years ago, and now still kind of looks. I guess that's good. I suppose that's all right.
You can't tell what age he is. It's great.
Right.
This trio defeats Stan Hansen, Steve Williams, and the second coming of Terry Gordy, Wolf Hockfield. I'm just kidding about that too. Tag team match: Jinsei Shinzaki and Masahito Kakihara. This is, if anything, Mrs. Baba should have just said, "I want you two guys to stay in this company." They don't, but that would have been good if they had these guys to just be on the undercard. That would be great. They defeat Muhammad Yone, who would then jump to no Pro Wrestling Noah, and
right. Whoops.
And Taiokeya, who stayed, and you know what, he did really well for himself. I think he's part of the reason. Like when Muto comes in and brings Kojima, they help him and Kea help usher in that next generation of guys that are gonna kind of spearhead All Japan throughout the 2010s.
Yeah, it's one of the guys that sometimes, I love moving in wrestling. I think people moving and leaving companies and going to different companies is good. I love it in American wrestling. I think it's necessary in American wrestling. Japanese wrestling, there's a little bit of a different vibe about it because of the loyalty stuff. But we say that, and there's been a lot of movement lately, especially anytime the business is kind of not in a perfect spot. People come and go and move. And you just talked about Nakajima and All Japan. I think that really, really it helps out All Japan in a big way. And the movement of, the exodus happening helped a lot of dudes in All Japan too. Because like you said, Kawada was like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to be in a better spot if I stay here. Taiokeya, again, there's no way on earth if all those guys stay that there's ever a situation where Taiokeya is anywhere near, the Triple Crown. And then he ends up becoming a big part of All Japan Pro Wrestling moving forward. And those guys, so I agree. I'm with it. And I think it's a really, really cool idea that guy and many other people said, you know what? It's not good right now. It looks real dire right now, but I'm going to hang around. I'm going to stay because, I stand to be in a better position. And we got some really fun matches. I mean, again, Taiokeya is, no great shakes, but I think that the run that he had when Muta got there and when things, it really, it's fun. I enjoy his stuff in that era. I think it's pretty solid actually. So, but yeah, he's a guy who, again, would have never had that opportunity if he had left and just joined the Exodus and he was one of, the 20 dudes that are there and just gets completely lost in the shuffle. He stays in All Japan and ends up being a great move for him.
Yeah, I mean, go watch. I recommend anytime he's in the ring with Tenryu. I recommend the match he has with Kojima. And I love his tag team, roughly Obsess and Destroy, Taka Michinoku's group. But the team he forms with Jamal, a.k.a. Umaka, is
things got real weird.
Awesome. That team, Taiokeya, fucking Jamal is fucking awesome. What a team that was. Yeah, Jamal in All Japan in the 2010.
Yeah, it's wild. Those I mean, things get wild in All Japan there for a while. Where I remember, reading results, and I'm like, D'Lo Brown, Jamal, what is happening to All Japan? What is going on over there? But then you watch it, and it's all guys doing pretty good. And it was that became the fun thing to talk about. Is the guys that they would bring guys in from America, and those guys would work their asses off when they're in All Japan because there's just a different working standard there, and there's just a different idea of what you're going to do. But yeah, it ended up making for a really fun decade for All Japan. It wasn't all great. But most of them were fun at the very low, and there were some, there were misses, but more times than not, there was some really good stuff in that era.
For every D'Lo Brown and Jamal, you also got Chuck Palumbo, and Viscera. So,
oh my God, I always forget that he was there. Oh wow, yeah.
But let's get to the main event. Genichiro Tenryu taking on Toshiaki Kawada for the vacant Triple Crown. Rich, how old do you think Tenryu is at the time of this match?
Now, he's another guy like Fujiwara who in 1990 looked like he was 54 years old and then never really aged ever again. His final few years, he did start to kind of look old. Obviously the match with Okada and the build up to that. So how old is Genichiro Tenryu here in the year 2000? I want to say he is 45.
He is 50.
Oh, all right. That's not bad. He looks pretty good for 50 at this time.
He does. And honestly, he's gonna have another 10 years of pretty good matches from this point out.
He was never a body guy. He comes from the sumo world, so he was obviously a bit of a beefy guy. In the 80s, he's pretty trim, but by the late 80s, he's already kind of got the Tenryu guts, and he's kind of just looks and that helps. It's not like his body broke or he didn't look like, oh man, that guy's old. He's not in great shape anymore. It's oh, this guy's in the same shape that he was 20 years ago.
He's going out with the sponsors every night, Rich.
Exactly.
They're paying for all his his Wagyu beef and all the alcohol he's drinking. Who's he to say no?
Oh yeah, and I love like after the match, jumping ahead, like he's gonna win this match, and he's just chugging beers backstage. Like he gets backstage and he's all sweaty. And you know how normally the guys will have a beer next, like as that still happens today. Guys will get to the desk and there's a beer there, and they'll take a couple sips. But more than it's just like Tenryu's just got a glass of unsponsored beer that he's just chugging in a frosty mug. It's just like, yep, because you knew the second the guy was gonna get backstage, he needed he needed a beer, and he was going out and he was eating some Japanese barbecue or some Wagyu beef within an hour after this match for sure.
But not before Araya has to towel this man's entire body dry.
Of course. Oh yeah. Well, hey, why do you have a young boy if you don't get beer and toweled off sweat? So,
and how old do you think our friend Dangerous K is at this time?
Oh man, I want to say he is 39.
Oh, you're very close. He's 37.
37. Okay, so he always looked a little older than he was. I always kind of got like you knew he was young, but the bags under his eyes. He's a guy that did not look like he ever got a very good night's sleep. So
also, all his front teeth are missing too,
and that doesn't help. Yeah, that definitely doesn't help. So
he looks. Actually, I think he looks a lot younger now. Maybe.
Yes. No, you're right. Every time I see him now, I'm like, Kawada looks like fantastic for his age because he's what now? He's got to be.
He's in his 50s. He's like close to 60, I think.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So you're right. He actually looks like he gets more sleep these days. And
I think he really enjoys making ramen, at his restaurant. Right. So
there
you go.
Yeah. He's 59 years old. So he's actually just about to be 60. Yeah. So he's no, he looks pretty good for his age these days. Every time I see him now, I'm like, I would think he's in his mid 50s or whatever, not approaching 60s. So.
He's coming to StarCast and hanging out with Eddie Kingston and shit. Like
that's one of my big regrets, man. I really badly wanted to go to StarCast. My wife was like, she wanted to do stuff that weekend. I was trying everything possible to be like, you know what? I gotta like go do something. Like I was trying to lie about what I wanted to do because the idea of being like, hey, I'm gonna ditch you to go get a picture with Kawhi. But I should have just put my foot down and said, you know what? No. So once in a lifetime, and I'm not a big like go and get guys autographs thing. I'm not a good, but like he's one of the dudes that if he's there, you got to do it, and I didn't do it, so I really regret that. One of my big regrets. Not to.
I'm sure Eddie's gonna bring him back to America at some point.
I hope so.
And do some like
correct that wrong because then I got like flooded with like texts of my friends going to meet him and pictures of it, and I was like, God damn it, I should be there right now. What am I doing?
I plan to meet him when I return to Japan for a visit and go to his ramen restaurant. Hopefully he's working that day and I'll get a picture with him.
Is it well regarded? Is it good ramen or is it just
I think at the time when I was still living there and I almost went with John Pollock, Rich. We almost went, but it's a long way out of central Tokyo. It's almost it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours by train.
That's tough. Yeah, that's tough. If you're in Japan for a limited amount of time, and it's not like there's a lot of ramen to be eaten. So it's not quite.
And we got a better offer, so to have ramen in Tokyo from Jojo Revi. So he was like, I know a really great place, and it's only like 20 minutes from your hotel. Okay, let's go there. Yeah. But let's get to the match itself. So Tenryu is out first, followed by Kawada, and our title match proclamation is done by none other than Canadian wrestling legend Gene Kiniski. I love when Gene Kiniski shows up here because Lord James Blair's, I think he might have been retired at this point, but Gene Kiniski with his like gravelly voice that I cannot understand what he's saying.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
Awesome.
Yeah, he like his pronunciation of the guys is now he's like here in the Triple Crown, Genichiro Tenryu. It's just like I don't know what's going on, but it's great. I still love that they do this. I like. There's something about the old, white, whether it be a Stan Hansen, whether it be Canada's greatest athlete, Gene Kiniski, whatever it may be. I always have a soft spot for the guy going out there and reading the proclamation before the title matches. It just adds such a big thing. If I was ever a wrestling promoter, which God help me, I will hopefully never get into a position where I'm dumb enough to just light my money on fire and become a wrestling promoter. But if I ever decide, maybe if I win the lottery and I do it, one of the things I would steal is I would steal the New Japan thing where they show all the champions on the screen before with the great music, and I would steal the proclamation. I would also steal the Dragon Gate, national anthem thing. It would take like 45 minutes before a championship match might start because I'm stealing all that shit. I love all of it.
Well, and you can let also all your wrestlers book their own angles too.
Right, exactly. Right.
So that works out really well.
right. I'd probably be a pushover too, so similar things would probably happen. But no, I love the proclamations. I love that there's still a level of professionalism where the PWF has to, be the governing body of this title match. Nobody cares. It doesn't really matter. But God, I love that they still care. I love that the company still cares about doing that.
So still steeped in tradition, which I love.
Yeah.
Our referee is a still youngish Kyohei Wada here. He's still great in this era. He's still an awesome referee. Unfortunately, as he gets close to the age of 70, he's not so much great anymore.
Yeah,
but
the counting is still done at a relatively decent pace here, as opposed to a little bit later when it's like 1. All right, here comes 2. All right, yeah. So he's still solid at this point. He's still one of the best to ever do it at this time.
So they start off with a Greco-Roman knuckle lock where neither man can get an advantage. They transition to a collar and elbow lockup. Now with Tenryu backing Kawada into the corner, there's a clean break from Tenryu. They lock up once again. Tenryu transitions to a standing wrist lock to an armbar. Kawada tries to escape, but Tenryu has a solid grip on Kawada here. Kawada takes Tenryu down and gets a side mount and applies a side headlock on his former mentor. Basically, the first 5 to 7 minutes of this is a feeling out process, because this is like you said, this is their first singles match against one another in how long again? 13 years?
11. Yeah.
11.
The last time they had a singles match, it was October 8th, 1989.
And when Tenryu came back, he was actually in a lot of tag matches with Kawada. They were actually on the same time.
This isn't, we should preface, this isn't his first match back or whatever. It's not just he just jumps into the tournament. He kind of dips his toes in the waters a little bit, does a lot of tag matches, does other stuff in the background as they're kind of getting him back. But yeah, this is, his first kind of big time singles match if you don't count those previous tournament matches. But yeah, he'd been around a little bit for a couple of months prior to this, but mostly just doing stuff in the background, doing tag matches, that sort of stuff.
So things pick up when Tenryu shoots Kawada to the ropes, but Kawada is able to knock the older man down with a shoulder block. And then he follows up with 3 of his trademark stiff kicks to the back of Tenryu. And Tenryu, classic Tenryu just gets up, no sells any of these kicks, and just stares at Kawada like, I'm now going to fucking kill you.
Right, yeah.
It's on.
It's so good. It's such a great moment. And two, it works with the father versus son thing. It's the son saying, yeah, look what I got for you now, Dad. And boom, boom, boom. And the father just standing up and going, nah, that's not I taught you better than that. No. Now you got it. Now you're grounded. Now I'm you know what I mean? Like it's that sort of stuff. But God, I love Tenryu. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. Like you mentioned, what are my 4, my favorite pillars, and I mentioned Kobashi and Kawada, but like my all-time guy is Tenryu. That's a dude that just, holy crap. I just love his style of wrestling. And it's just a lot of it is facials. A lot of it is what he does in between his work. His work is phenomenal, but the guy just, the aura that he has around him, just the vibes around Tenryu are just unmatched. And yeah, you get it. Like you said, it comes in because the beginning of the match is very much like they're trying to, do wrist locks and they're doing these sort of things here. Then Kawada kicks it up and then Tenryu's just like, oh, you fucked up now, man. And then we're off. Then we're off, man. We're ready to go.
I would say Tenryu is like the precursor of Minoru Suzuki. Like when Minoru Suzuki, his character was done by Tenryu, like the grumpy veteran who will abuse a younger wrestler in the ring, not taking liberties with them like in real life or anything like that, but that's his character, right? Like he's gonna beat the shit out of you if you're a younger wrestler. And from Minoru Suzuki to Jun Akiyama, Tenryu lays down I'm not saying he's the first person to ever do it, but he lays the blueprint for guys like Minoru Suzuki and Jun Akiyama for being that grumpy older wrestler asshole. and for fans like us, Rich, we eat this stuff up.
Love the grumpy veteran asshole. Yeah, it's the best. And yeah, it's just it's subtle stuff too. It's just the look on his face, like you said. He just stands up, just like, man, now I got to do this. Like he never wants to do it. You know what I mean? It's just like, damn it, now you've made me do this. He puts it's like, the dad putting his beer down, like, to go discipline the child or whatever. He doesn't want to do it, but he's like, you've made me do it. All right, fine. Now I got to kill you. And that's I love it. It's so good.
It's on. They start a forearm exchange with one another. Kawada hits ropes and Tenryu meets him with a stiff chop to the throat and then snaps him over to deliver his own stiff kicks to the back of Kawada. Kawada retaliates with his trademark low kicks to Tenryu's legs and calves. He follows up with a slam and more kicks, but Tenryu isn't having any of it, Rich, and he stands up to break Kawada's momentum. He just no sells. That didn't do nothing to me. Fuck you.
Right. There's a lot of that in this match. There's a lot of no selling in this match, and some people might, I was reading other people's reviews, and they a lot of people didn't love that, or this happened, and then they know so. I love that shit because I think this is so much of a match about like it's a battle of wits more so than a battle like a physical battle. It's a battle of, like we said, the father versus son battle. It's the battle that these guys, he abandoned him, and here's the father coming back to face off against the son that he left, and the son who's angry that the father left, and now he's back in his territory, in his area, in his company or whatever. So it's just like I don't know. To me, like the no selling works for this match. There's several points where these guys are going to do something to each other, and the other guy's just going to get up and just kind of snarl about it. And I love that stuff, man. I think it works for a situation like this where you can buy that a guy maybe, and you can even buy that like this guy is hurt or that something does hurt this guy, but that he doesn't want to show it. They don't want to show the other guy that they're hurt. They don't want to show the other guy that they've gotten one up on him. So that's where I think so many people go to no selling immediately as like, oh, that's made no sense. Or I don't know if that's always the case. I think sometimes, pride plays a huge factor in this. And there's a lot of pride in this match.
I mean, with Tenryu, my kind of explanation would be like, this guy is like at this point, what, a 20-year veteran in this business, in like doing like some of the hardest hitting wrestling of all time, like with Jumbo, with like Hashimoto. He can take it. He's experienced, so like he's not gonna just like crumble up and curl up into a fetal position for stiff kick to the back he gets. He's gonna be like, fuck you.
Right.
You think I'm washed up? I'm gonna show you how washed up I am. And that
absolutely.
So Tenryu backs Kawada into the corner and starts peppering him with his trademark stiff chops, punches to the face combo. I love this. Is one of my favorite Tenryu combos. Is like punch, chop, punch, and everything looks like they are connecting. And he's so great at this.
Oh, it's one of the greatest moves. And yeah, it's a move that I didn't even know was his. Like I remember him from the WCW N64 games long before I knew, anything about the All Japan games that they were modeled after or whatever. But I remember guys would have this move and I was like, man, I don't know what this move is or who this is, but every one of my created wrestlers and all those games always had that move. And I forget what the Tenryu character was in Revenge of World Tour. I forget what his name was. I can look it up. Or
they had some crazy names for the guys
they were
based on
weird. I think
wrestling.
he was like Fujo Sumo something. I forget what it was. I'll figure it out later during the show or something like that. It'll come to me. But no, I always played as those characters and I didn't know what Tenryu was. I knew nothing about Tenryu, but that was the move that I love doing that to friends because like you would do it and it would just last for like 20 seconds where they're like, what the fuck? I can't do anything. And I'm like, no. As he boom, 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 punch, chop, punch, chop, punch. It's great stuff. And then when I discovered Tenryu was a real person and really good, and he did those things in real life, it was a game changer for me. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. And the crowd at this point too is just going nuts because now he's back in their ring. He's back in an All Japan ring doing Tenryu things. He's back. He's better than ever. He's you can feel that healing process, like you're saying. These fans feel like, okay, we lost a lot here. We lost we lost our identity when all those guys left with the Exodus, but we're starting to maybe it's a new identity, maybe it's an old identity, whatever it is, we're getting it back. And you could hear the pride of the crowd as Tenryu is just doing these moves. And they're like, holy shit, we're watching this guy and he's back and he's just as good as when he left.
Kawada gets pissed off and switches position and starts laying in his own stiff chops to Tenryu. Some more exchanges of strikes with Tenryu on his back, going for low kicks to Kawada's legs, taking a page out of Dangerous K's playbook here. However, Kawada is able to hit a jumping knee to the face of a prone on his back Tenryu. That can't be fun. Even though I'm sure he's protecting him, it's like, yeah, there's some contact there. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's wrestling. It's Japanese wrestling.
It's Japanese wrestling. That's why I always tell people because I'll show matches to people and they're like, "Are they really hitting each other?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And they're like, isn't supposed to be, because there'll be people that don't watch any Japanese wrestling, and I try to get them to watch. Usually, when people are bitching and moaning about like U.S. wrestling, I'm like, "All right, shut up and watch this stuff then instead." Because put your money where your mouth is. Watch this stuff instead. And I usually get that like, "Man, it really looks like they're hitting each other. Are they like mad?" And I'm like, "That's just kind of what you do. I mean, that's just part of the style. Is sometimes they don't have to hate each other to lay it in a little thick, and I appreciate that. It's something I always appreciated about All Japan Pro Wrestling, particularly in the 90s, is that hey, part of it it's supposed to be a simulation of a sport. So you know what, lay it in a couple times. If both guys are cool with it, they're cool with it.
Kawada goes for a series of kicks, which Tenryu absorbs until he is able to land some punches on Kawada, which Kawada selling of these punches because he just looks like he is knocked loopy. He's about to sit down because he can't stand up. This is like the thing, like I'm gonna say Kawada is probably, for me personally, like one of the top 3 sellers of all time, up there with like someone like Shinjiro Otani, especially with facials. Like the facials that Kawada does is like it's unparalleled even to this day in wrestling.
No, he's you're right on the money there. He is a tremendous seller, and that might be one of the reasons why I maybe appreciate him a little bit more. And like you said, why maybe he's one of your favorites too, is because during the course of a match, he is so good at selling and letting you know that he's struggling and letting you know that he's like, I don't know that you get that as much from Kobashi Misawa. They look like they're in control almost the entire time. I mean, they might be taking falls, they might be getting dropped on their head, quite literally in many cases, but you don't feel the struggle as much as you feel the struggle with Kawada. Like, this guy is getting hurt. This guy is starting to fade. This guy is starting to, maybe be on the wrong side of this match. And then that's what makes his comeback so much more incredible and so great and so interesting. And that might be a big reason why, like we said at the top of the show, why you and I both really, adore Kawada, is that selling really plays a big part of it.
So it's a very back and forth match so far, but there's a point where Kawada goes back to the kicks, this time to Tenryu's face. But Tenryu's strategy seems to be like, I'm going to take this punishment from him so I can do something special, which in this case is hitting Kawada with this sick looking dragon screw leg whip. Not the kind of, Tatsumi Fujinami, Keiji Muto, Tanahashi type of dragon screw leg whip, Rich, but one that's like he just torques on that knee joint.
Yeah.
And it looks like, okay, Kawada didn't go over. Like, Kawada's still staying in the same position, but guess what? His knee joint and his leg went with Tenryu. And it's one of those ones that I like these ones a lot. They look more realistic.
Yeah. No, it's not smooth at all, but it's that makes it better. You know what I mean? Like, it's not smooth, it's not fluid. It looks like it fucking hurts. It looks like your knee is in a lot of pain when it's done. It is an awesome move, and you're absolutely right. I'll take this over the fluid, fast, well done dragon screw. I'll take I'm just gonna bend your knee joint, and if your body goes, but if not, I don't really care type of the dragon screw that Tenryu does here.
Tenryu applies a knee bar to the leg, but Kawada is able to withstand it until he gets to the ropes. Then Tenryu transitions to a figure 4 leg lock, but Kawada is able to escape that as well. I know a lot of people don't like this sequence in the match because like it doesn't play into the finish at all, and Kawada doesn't really sell it. But I don't care. I like psychology in wrestling, but I'm not a selling fetishist. Like, yeah, because at the end of the match, Kawada's like, I'm close to the prize. I'm gonna become the Triple Crown champion. I'm gonna beat my mentor. So like the adrenaline is pumping throughout his body into his knee joints, Rich. And so like it's giving him the energy to not feel the pain of all the damage that Tenryu's doing at this point.
Yeah, and I think one time Kenny Omega, followed up with people because there was a time, I forget when it was. I'm sure it was when he was having great matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and people were bad mouthing some sell or whatever. And he's like, "Look, I played hockey with broken ankles, twisted ankles, jacked up knees, jacked up shoulders. Guys are playing with injuries all the time. It's a matter of how much are you going to fight through it. And sometimes, yes, you should sell. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't sell. You should sell, but like." There are times where absolutely in the case of adrenaline, and Kenny said that too, there's times where I'd get on a hockey rink and I'd hurt like hell. But once that puck dropped, it was like, all right, you know what, whatever, like I'm going to get through it. Happens, athletes can get through pain a lot. They're not supposed to be incapacitated all the time. So yeah, adrenaline in a case like this, he's facing his mentor for the Triple Crown Championship in this company that he needs to save. Of course, he's going to say, screw the knee, screw whatever. I need to win this match above anything else. I have to win this match. So I'm 100% with you. I think you should sell, and selling is important, and psychology is important. But yeah, I don't need a guy limping the entire time. I'm okay with a guy that has been limping to now say, you know what, screw this. I'm getting through. I'm letting the adrenaline get me through this match, and that's what happens here. It doesn't bother me like it bothers some other people.
More punches that do a lot of visible damage to Kawada, thanks to his selling, of course. And Tenryu goes for the Sasori Gatame, or as it's more famously known as the Scorpion Deathlock. He does a really great version. He just, first of all, he locks in the knees and the legs really tightly around his own leg, and then he just sits back on Kawada here. I think this is like something he must have like picked up from like watching or facing Riki Choshu so many times.
Yeah, this is a move that unless you know how to do, I don't know if you've ever like I'm sure you've done like wrestling moves to people when you're younger. That was always the fun thing. We used to do sharpshooters to each other, and then we realized like this move kind of hurts. And I think a lot of it was because when you do it like the Bret Hart style, you kind of make sure there's a little bit of a space between the knees. You don't go all the way down. Sometimes he would go all the way down, but then you see how like the Japanese guys do it, and you're like, well, yeah, that's why it hurts. Like it's knee on knee, and then you pull back. There's no way that's not going to hurt. So I agree. This is he does it really well, and like you said, a lot of Riki Choshu elements in there.
Some more chop punch combos, which will play into the finish of this match. This is the psychology, the real psychology. Are these chop punch, especially the punches. This is like Tenryu is his strategy in this match is brilliant because he knows like a lot of the things that like he could try to do that like Misawa or Kobashi or Taue or Stan Hansen could try to do in a similar situation aren't necessarily going to put away this guy. So I'm going to play to my strengths, and we'll talk about that when we get to the finish. Tenryu tries for a brainbuster, but Kawada is able to get him over with a vertical suplex. There are high kicks to the face with a flurry of kicks and strikes on Tenryu, including one particularly stiff-looking one to the face that just stuns Tenryu. And here Kawada's like, okay, I have to like just unleash everything on Tenryu because like he's 37, Tenryu is 50. So you got to think Kawada's thinking, I'm younger, I'm in my prime. He's getting closer to, the quote unquote twilight of his career, and he's has a lot more mileage on his body. I should be able to defeat him, but I can't. So like he's unleashing it all at this point in the match.
Yeah, and this is kind of where we are seeing the difference of, like I mentioned, where this match more than anything kind of closes the book to me on the King's Road era of All Japan, because Kawada's going to what he knew and what he would do over the last 10 years, which is, we're going to do big time suplexes. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to do, these sort of, I'm going to hit my big moves and you're going to kick out of them, or we're going to go back and forth and throw bombs at one another. And kind of like you said, Tenryu is just kind of sitting back and not necessarily falling into the trap that Kawada is trying to get him into. Kawada's doing everything. Kawada is going through the whole book, the whole bag, everything that he could possibly do he's throwing at Tenryu, and Tenryu's just sitting back. And like you said, getting a punch in there every so often, getting a chop in there every so often, doing those sort of things. These guys aren't throwing bombs back and forth. One guy is throwing bombs. One guy is doing everything he can to throw those bombs. The other guy is sitting back. And I think to me that more than anything signifies this end of the King's Row, because if Kawada's in there with Kobashi's then going to grab him and do a belly-to-back suplex and drop him on his neck. And, that sort of stuff back and forth. Tenryu is just sitting there and playing the long game while Kawada's getting himself all tired out and all tuckered out or whatever, doing whatever he can to beat his old dad or whatever. And it makes for a really fun dynamic in the match where one guy is symbolizing that previous era, and this other guy is a whole different thing altogether in Tenryu.
There's not that many pin attempts, actually.
I don't even remember. I was trying to count them, and I think I got to like 3 or 4. And yeah, it not many. I mean, you have a couple at the beginning of the match during like the feeling out process, but then I think you have about 10 minutes or so where neither guy is attempting a pinfall. They're just trying to beat the other guy into and know when it is time to beat them. And then what we'll see from Tenryu is he had a completely different idea altogether of how he wanted to win this match. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't do an exact count. I like to do that sometimes, but there was not many at all.
No. Tenryu climbs to the top rope and hits his falling backwards elbow, and then he goes for the WAR special, which is his submission move. Kawada gets up, and both guys hit each other some more before Kawada gives Tenryu one motherfucker of a receipt when he punches Tenryu in the face and follows up with an integrator. This is like one of them straight ass like punches in the guy's face. I loved it, and then Tenryu just like he just sells it so beautifully, and then but before he can go down, like Kawada just hits him with a beautiful looking enziguri. It's great.
Yeah, a great sell by Tenryu, and sometimes it's better to kind of lay it in a little bit. The famous match with Tenryu and Okada, where the famous story as well, where halfway through that match or a couple minutes into that match, Tenryu tells Okada like, you're just gonna have to hit me hard, man. Let's make like I can't do it anymore. I don't think I can get on your level anymore. So you know what we're gonna do? You gotta just punch me in the face, and it'll look a lot better. And Okada just being like, "Are you sure?" And it's Tenryu being like, "Yeah." And you get it here, where it is so much better that Kawada just lays it into him. You know what I mean? Like he could have chopped him again, he could have struck him again with the forearm, but it's so much better that he just reared back and just punched him. And as we're going to see with the finish, it makes all the sense in the world too. So it worked from a psychology standpoint too. And it's just, sometimes it's so much better to just lay it in there. And Tenryu's a big boy. He can handle it. And he's given many of them out. He can handle a few punches himself. So
Yeah, Tenryu is the kind of guy, like, hey, I'm going to hit you really hard, so you can hit me really hard. I don't care.
I'm about to punch you, so you can punch me. It's all good, brother.
With Tenryu sitting on the mat, Kawada hits a beautiful series of chops and kicks and then goes for one of his signature moves, the sitting stretch plum, stolen from or inspired by. So I like to say stolen from Plum Marco. Tenryu won't give up though, and prevents Kawada from getting him up with a power bomb. So Kawada's trying to power bomb Tenryu, but Tenryu is able to flip him over with a backdrop. Kawada gets up right away and goes for a running kick to the face, but Tenryu has scouted this and gets to Kawada first with a stiff-looking clothesline. So, like, in my headcanon, Rich, I'm thinking, Tenryu's prepared for this. He's watched countless, he's done some tape trading of his own.
Oh,
and
sure.
and watched a bunch of he's like, I'm gonna watch some Kawada versus Kobashi. That's gonna be one of my strategies. I'm not gonna go for the Masawa strategy. I'm gonna go for the Kobashi strategy.
Yeah.
And he hits him with like a very fine looking stiff clothesline.
Oh yeah, it is loud. It's a loud lariat too. It is it rocks. It's a really cool moment. Like you said, yeah, he's one step. A lot of this match is Tenryu is one step. The father is still one step ahead of the son in a lot of ways, and this is probably the most telling of that, where Kawada feels like he's got a little momentum here, thinks like he's got something, and then Tenryu just takes his fucking head off.
Tenryu unsuccessfully goes for his own powerbomb and then goes for an unsuccessful looking capo kick, which ends up looking like he hit Kawada with his ass. And unfortunately, this gets some kind of laughs, and maybe I hear a groan here and there in Budokan Hall.
Yeah, this is you're not wrong. My notes kind of say like didn't get all of that, and then I was kind of I did remark too. It was pretty interesting that the crowd did sort of go like maybe this guy doesn't have it, maybe he's not enough. But it's an interesting spot in this match, and it does sort of it briefly takes you out of the match a little bit, just because it seemed to take the crowd out of the match a little bit too. But we got back on track quickly.
There's a strike exchange between the two again, but Kawada is now getting into King's Road mode. He hits Tenryu with 2 backdrop drivers in a row. Fortunately, Tenryu is able to roll out to the floor from the second one, where he looks really woozy. He gets back up on the apron, but Kawada hits the ropes and then hits Kawada straight in the face with a running kick to his face, which not only sends Tenryu flying into the barricades, flying into the area where Gene Kaninsky is sitting, but also busts open Tenryu's nose legit.
Yeah. Which is perfect too. Anytime accidental blood is one of my favorite things in wrestling. It just brings up a match so much more. And Tenryu with a bloody and busted up nose is only going to take this thing up many, many, many notches, and it absolutely does.
Kawada comes out to the ring, out to the floor, and whips Tenryu into a barricade, and then knocks him over with a running kick to the face. Kawada with a series of kicks to the face and chest, and enziguri is blocked by Tenryu, but he's not able to block the running kick to the face again. So now this bloody nose is a big target for Kawada. Tenryu takes an enziguri to the back of the head, but he's able to hit Kawada with another stiff lariat. This is now we're at the crescendo here, Rich. Kawada is able to duck another lariat, but not the stiff punch in the face.
No.
Which basically knocks him out. And then Tenryu delivers the coup de grace and hits the awesome Northern Lights bomb for the 3 count and wins the Triple Crown for the second time in his career in 26 minutes and 28 seconds. And I have to say, I do not feel this is like a close to 30-minute match. I feel this is kind of maybe 10. It feels like it's like 10 minutes shorter to me. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I kind of had the same thought too. It's 26-28, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels kind of like a 18 to 19-minute match or whatever, and that's a testament to these guys as well. They made a match that was 30. The time flew by. Yeah, I would never have thought this was almost a 30-minute match, and I do love that finish too, because he gives him the punch, like you said. Kawada is out. The guy is knocked out. He's loopy. He falls to the mat. You can tell he's done. And then Tenryu's like, nah, I'm gonna pick you up and then drop you on your head, and then I'm gonna. It's just that next little bit of disrespect and shock. And then when that 1, 2, 3 hits and that crowd realizes, oh my God, Tenryu is a Triple Crown champion, there's a gasp that comes from the crowd. They just cannot believe what they're seeing here, that Tenryu here has come back to this company, has come back to All Japan Pro Wrestling, and he's once again the Triple Crown champion. And Kawada is just, you could tell he's livid. He leaves the ring and is just so pissed and spitting and snarling and just cannot believe that this guy, his dad has come back and beat him for the Triple Crown, and now what is he going to do to recover and get back on track here? I think a great finish and the right result too. I know at the time I was going and reading like everybody was kind of like, I don't know if giving the title to Tenryu was really the right move, but I think it did help. It did, because then Kawada had something to kind of work for and work towards, and it gives you a little bit more of a story. Because if Tenryu just comes in and Kawada just beats him, it's like, all right, Kawada's the champion, and now we're just going to bring a bunch of dudes in. I think it worked best to have the quote unquote invader. At this time, he still kind of feels like an invader, come in and win that title, and then do something, because that was the template for so many title wins over the 90s, particularly in New Japan, where you'd have kind of that outsider come in, win the title, and then the New Japan guys have to go back and win the title from him.
Yeah, I mean, I overall, I think this is a really very fun even match. And what I to your point earlier, Tenryu doesn't try to recreate King's Road style here.
He can't.
Oh, there's not multiple kickouts after big moves. And like, I like the fact, like you said this, I like the fact that Kawada takes the Northern Light bomb. He's knocked out by the punch beforehand, but he gets pinned instead of like, and there's not another like 7-10 minutes of big bombs and kickouts, going into this. I like the structure of this match. I think it makes a lot of sense. And to your point about Tenryu winning the title, I mean, it now frees Kawada up to do all the New Japan stuff that he's going to do, which is what is going to help also keep the doors open in All Japan. Is like, okay, now I can go. I'm not the Triple Crown champion, so politically, I don't have to, finagle finishes with Choshu over at New Japan with Sasaki. So he has the matches with Kensuke Sasaki. He has the awesome tag match where him and Fuji take on Nagata Iizuka. And they don't have to worry about politics as much as they would if Kawada was the Triple Crown champion. And to your point, it makes sense for Tenryu to come in and become the Triple Crown champion because it's fresh. Yeah. He hasn't had the Triple Crown in what, like, I don't know, 11 years, So the last time he held it, he was facing Jumbo, and now it's like, it's a new era. It's a new Tenryu. It's a different Tenryu. And it's a different promotion, and like, there's intrigue. I think with fans at the time, they're like, well, who's he going to face? Who are they going to bring in to fight him? And we'll talk about that. The aftermath.
Absolutely.
Would he would defend the belt once against Taiokeia until losing the belt to, excuse me.
Hey, I think your mic muted.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Yeah, there
you go. Sorry. This is what this. So he loses he defends the belt against Taiokeia once, and then he loses the belt to Keiji Muto on June 8th, 2001. So this kind of epitomizes Tenryu's tenure on top in All Japan, is that he is the transition from Four Pillars era, from Giant Baba booking.
Yep.
To the coming in of Keiji Muto, where Mrs. Baba just loves Muto to the point where she doesn't want to sell the company to Misawa, even though he's offering to buy it from her.
Right. But no, this guy comes in.
No, you're going to change it too much. I don't like your ideas. But then he sells it to Muto, who's going to bring in porn stars and all these American guys, because that's more palpable to Mrs. Baba. Who knows?
Muto's got a way, man. There's a way. I would not want to be in a room with that guy, because I don't know what he does. I don't know what magical powers he has, but this guy, time and time again, have convinced people to do stuff against their better judgment. So who knows? This guy's a whiner and a diner. I don't know what it is, but he makes it work every time.
He could probably sell you some swampland over in Florida.
Sure, I don't know. I don't want to be in a room with him, because I'm going to leave and somehow I'm going to be investing in timeshares or swampland, or I don't know what the hell he's going to have me do. Who knows? I just don't want to be in the room with him. Who knows?
He would hold the title once more in 2002, defeating Muto for it. He would defend that title once against Kojima before losing it for the final time against the Great Muta. So trading back and forth with Keiji Muto. Tenryu would leave All Japan soon after this and to ply his trade in Pro Wrestling Noah and other places. But my God, his short but memorable run in Pro Wrestling Noah is awesome. Go see it. He primarily does mainly tag matches, but there's this great point. You must know this one, Rich, where Kobachi's on one side, Tenryu's on the other, and at some point, like, Kobashi's just like, I remember how you abused me as a young boy. Now I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, old man. And at one point, Tenryu just grabs a bottle of water or something and just whips it at Kobashi, and it hits him, and Kobashi is pissed. That's an awesome. Just for that moment alone, that match is like 5.5 stars for me.
Absolutely, yeah. He is now in like when we're watching him in All Japan, he's grumpy, but he's still in his prime. By the time the Noah thing comes, he's just a grumpy old guy that's like winding down his career or whatever, and it's so good. You know what I mean? It's so good because he's just so pissed and so angry and so grumpy, and it's fantastic. Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong. He has Tenryu has a singles match with Kenta, doesn't he? It's one of his few singles matches.
Shoot, I think you're right. Let me make sure I didn't just dream that match, because that sounds. I don't know if I've seen that one in a long time.
But anytime Tenryu's in there with Kenta.
Yes,
magic.
Yes, Autumn Navigation 2005, October 8th, 2005. I've not watched that one in a while, but I need to watch that very, very soon. He has a match with Ogawa too, which I imagine is really fun too. So.
Because Ogawa is one of his students as well, and one of the guys that was in Revolution as well. But honestly, like you can take the last 4 years of Kenta's career now, throw them out the garbage. Don't ever watch those. Go back and watch this match with Tenryu. Yes. It's fucking awesome. To two guys who are just surly bastards beat the shit out of one another. One's significantly older than the other, but it's fun. Like, I will take that over any Hideo Itami match, anything Kenta has done in the last 4 years. So
Kenta's grumpiness, even as like a 24-year-old, is just unmatched by anybody else. Like, why are you so angry? What are you so angry about, dude? But it makes for some great wrestling, man. I'm for it.
I miss Grumpy Kenta. Now it's more comedy Kenta, which has a thing, but anyways. This brings us to the close of this match review. Great match. Thank you, Rich, for picking it. Any final thoughts about this match or about Tenryu or Kawada before we close things out?
Yeah, I would just say, like, if you're going to watch this match, I know a lot of the other matches that you've done in this series are some of the greatest matches of all time, some of the best bell-to-bell matches you'll ever see, just incredible stuff. I don't know that this is one of those matches, but I think this is a really, really fun match, and one that you definitely should watch and check out. It's not as easy to find as some of the other ones, but for a little bit of work, you can find it. But it's a different thing. And like I said, to me, it really closed the book on the Kings Road era of All Japan, and opens up a new book, and a book that's not going to be very long, because like you said, it's going to close very quickly with the Pro Love era coming very, very soon. But I think it's just a very important match, and hopefully we gave some context to why it's as important as it is. Because if you just drop in and watch this match, it might not mean that much to you, and you might leave going, yeah, that was okay, but I've seen better. And you have definitely seen better if you've watched a lot of the classic All Japan stuff. If you watched the classic, stuff that you guys have covered here on the Long and Winding Royal Road, you've seen better matches. I'm positive you have. But this one has so much symbolism, so much meaning, so much background, so much things that went into it, that to me it's a tremendously special match. And I just the history behind it and the history of everything, like I've said before that bell even rings, I mean, there's just so much that gets into it. And I think the match, every second of the match plays into all that history as well. So it's not in a vacuum, is it as good as some of the classic matches that you're going to watch throughout the series? It's not, but it is it's as important as any of those other matches, and in some cases more important than a lot of them, because of what it just symbolized, going in, and what it symbolized coming out of as well.
All right. And before we head out, Rich, let's get to the plugs that we promised at the beginning of this episode.
Let's do that. Yeah. So voicesofwrestling.com obviously is the website that I run. We have columns, previews, reviews about all the stuff going on in major pro wrestling all over the world. U.S. wrestling, Japanese wrestling, Mexican wrestling, all that stuff. We're covering it there at voicesofwrestling.com. We also have the Voice Wrestling Podcast Network, which is a podcast network of a bunch of different podcasts covering the entire world of wrestling. We have a Joshi show. We have a Dragon Gate show. We have a show that covers American wrestling. We have shows that cover pro wrestling trivia, pro wrestling history, European wrestling, the music of wrestling, Noah and All Japan, just a ton of other stuff is on there. So yeah, that is all available. TNA history as well, if you're into that is all there at the Voice Wrestling Podcast Network. You can get that at whatever podcast app you use as well. We have a full-on network feed, so if you just want to subscribe to the whole network, you can do that, as well as a feed for every individual show as well on that network. I host the Flagship Podcast, which we do that every single week, talking just kind of the entire world of wrestling in the way we've done for 11 plus years at this point on the Flagship. And then if you need some bonus audio with myself, you can do so at flagshippatreon.com. That's where we do a lot of our bonus audio, a lot of retro content, as well as new stuff. We just finished up a very long series of shows talking about the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame, going region by region and talking about all the different wrestlers in all those regions. We have retro series as well, including the Bret versus Owen series that I just said. We just started there, breaking down the Bret Hart versus Owen Hart feud. But that is all available at flagshippatreon.com. We have a $1 trial tier. $5 unlocks all the bonus audio, and then $10 unlocks all of our live shows, as well as all of our writing, plus all the bonus audio you talked about as well, because we do some columns up there pretty often as well at flagshippatreon.com. So that is all available there. $1, $5, $10 tiers.
$10, folks. They're basically giving this stuff away.
Everything, giving it away. And like you said at the top, I'm doing rich drinks. I'm drinking Mountain Dew for your good, and I'm probably going to get diabetes for it as well. So I need that money more than not yet, but soon. I'm going to need that money for upcoming medical bills. But no, $10 unlocks everything we do, all of our live shows, all of our bonus audio, all of our written content. To me, it's a no-brainer. But hey, I know money's tight these days, so we have the $1 tier that you'll get a few things per month, and then the $5 tier we'll get all of our bonus audio. But highly recommend the $10. The Bret versus Owen is on our $5 tier, so if that's enough for you, that's fine. But definitely do what WH did and get on that $10 tier.
Get on that $10 tier. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff over there. You know, someone who's been like listening for the last 5-6 years now. Like it's nice to get a different perspective. Like, of course, like, you know, you want to get the overview of wrestling from about WWE, AEW for John Wade, but like go over to Voice of Wrestling, the flagship, and then you get a different perspective, especially like rants. I like great ranting.
Come for the rants.
On the flagship there.
We are passionate. As you said. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. And for, AEW fans has been bad as of late. I'll tell you that, because we have been doing some ranting about what's going on there. But that's what we always say. One thing on the flagship, like the idea is that at some point we are going to bury or make fun of something that you love. And you'll either love us and go, those guys are burying something I love, that's funny, or you'll hate us and you'll never listen again. But that's fine. They come and go, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, it is a very passionate website. And the flagship and flagshippatreon.com is very passionate audio about professional wrestling. We love wrestling. We're not really beholden to any one company or anything. So when you're bad, we're going to tell you we're bad. When you're good, we're going to tell you you're good. But that's what we've done. It's what we've done for a decade plus at this point over there.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for being on this show. I appreciate it. Thank you for picking a great match. We will have you back on the Long and Winding Railroad in the future. Hopefully, before another 39 episodes happen, we'll have you on sooner than that. And then, I look forward to hearing all the great stuff you're doing over at Voices of Wrestling and a future appearance here. I know you contributed some stuff to John's Terry Funk retrospective as well. So go check out that. Rich had some contributions for John. He's credited there. So which is, by the way, I gotta say, was one of the top. Like I maybe read 3. I think John's was probably the best one that I read, and I'm biased.
I would agree. No. I would agree as well. Yeah, you are biased, and that's fine. Hey, and you're supposed to be. That's your team. But no, definitely, I would agree that John's writing on Terry Funk and John's writing in general, I think, is a whole different level of professionalism from what a lot of other people are doing in the wrestling world. And that Terry Funk retrospective, of course, if you're listening to this and you have not read that, you can also listen to it too, right? Didn't John do a audio?
He did,
that's a really cool idea too. And I'm something that we might borrow. Now, I don't want to say steal, might borrow over at Flagship Patreon. I think it's a really, really good idea, because I know a lot of people are in cars or walking around or working out and doing those sort of things, so don't have time to read. People don't read anymore. It's 2023. We've got time to read. We got to listen and watch.
No. You don't understand. You don't understand, Rich. Like John listens to everything at 1.5 times the speed, and I think he might be a speed reader, because I am gonna have, as of this recording, I'm gonna have coffee with John sometime in the coming week, and I'm gonna hand him off the Gene LaBelle biography, the real like physical book. So he's gonna be talking about that at some point with Way, I'm awesome. Sure, on one of their shows.
No, that sounds great. But that Terry Funk retrospective, it's far and away the best Terry Funk. We did audio on it on the flagship, but I think which was to me one of the better audio shows. I'm biased as well. I was on it, but in terms of the written word, I think John's piece on Terry Funk was great, and I was more than happy to contribute just even a small piece to it.
All right, so thanks for everyone out there. Thank you for supporting the Long and Winding Railroad. Thanks for buying the T-shirt. What is it? What does Eric Bischoff say? Controversy creates cash. Well, guess what?
Absolutely. Yeah. I hope you sold so many more T-shirts once that controversy happened. Thank God.
It was great.
Guys, yeah.
It's the best thing that happened.
I was in the background just laughing as that was going on. Like, oh my God, you think you're stopping them? They're just going to sell so many more T-shirts. No. And you know what? I'll even say I even like the new design better than the old design too. So and I love the old design, but I think the new design is what I'll say about that shirt is it's one that you can wear in public, and it's just a cool shirt. And if people know, they know. And if they don't know, it's fine. You know, that's one of the problems with a lot of wrestling shirts, not necessarily wrestling podcasts or wrestling website shirts, but like wrestling shirts in general. It's just like these big letters and this dumb stuff all over it. It's like, if you wear it, people are just like, what the hell is this man wearing? That is a very subtle shirt. So yeah, sell those shirts, buy that shirt, man. That is a one of the better wrestling shirts I've ever seen. So you guys, I hope sold 1 million of those. Hopefully 1 billion.
Oh, I could tell you stories about in real time, like the success of the controversy. But
yes, good for you. I knew it as it was happening. I'm like, oh, they are just gonna sell so many of these shirts. Good for them. Yeah.
But thank you. We had a great 2023. We're gonna have a great 2024. Hopefully, some returning guests. I'm gonna reach out to some returning guests, get some new guests on this show, and there's still a ton of stuff to mine in the era of the Kings Road era of the 90s in All Japan. But for everyone, thank you for a great 2023. I'll see you next year. And until such time, I will say goodbye.